On a bustling city bus, young Ava noticed an elderly man struggling to stand. Without a second thought, she offered him her seat, a simple act of kindness that anyone would commend. But as the man settled down, he reached into his coat pocket, pulling out something that made the entire bus go silent. Ava had no idea what she had just been handed by the kind-looking old man. But she felt like other people did at least have an idea, as she suddenly felt a lot of eyes land on her. Ava quickly put the object in her pocket. One man even came up to her and asked her if she could take that object out of her pocket so that he could have a look at it. Ava got really nervous and started shaking her head, but the man was not about to give up. In a desperate attempt, Ava rushed past the man and jumped out of the bus just before the doors closed, giving other passengers no chance to follow her. The bus continued on its journey and she saw dozens of pairs of eyes looking out the windows at her. Ava was left behind completely stunned. What had she just gotten herself into? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. She was still quite a while away from home, but there was no way she was going to wait here for another bus. Ava was way too afraid that passengers from her previous bus ride were going to get out at the next stop and come back to her. She needed to find another way to get home. But how? She was just a young girl and did not really have money on hand besides her bus card. She did know where she was luckily and which general direction her house was in, and so Ava just started walking. After about 15 minutes of fighting her curiosity, and with her neighborhood still nowhere inside, Ava could not take it anymore. She looked around her to see if anybody was watching and then quickly made her way into a dark alley. When she was sure there was nobody around, Ava pulled the object out of her pocket to have a better look at it, and she could just not understand what all the fuzz had been about. It was just looking like a small little electronic device. But then why had the old man been so adamant that she had to keep it on her person at all costs? When she was still busy inspecting the object, Ava suddenly heard something behind her. She quickly turned around and saw that somebody had also walked the alley. Yes, it was dark, so she could not really make out any features. All she knew was that the person was very big, and then asked her what a little girl like her was doing in a place like this. Ava's heart dropped at that moment. This was exactly the kind of situation that her mother had warned her about. Stay away from strangers. Ava looked around and saw that there was no escape, and the unknown man started coming closer and closer. Ava started to beg and ask if she could just leave, but her request was not honored at all. The man told her that she was going to come with him, and if she just trusted him and did not resist, that there would be no trouble then. Ava was getting more and more scared, but the man quickly revealed that she had nothing to fear. When he took Ava back in the street, she was still haunted by the reaction it had gotten from the people on the bus. And so Ava tried to come up with a lie. After a moment's hesitation, Ava nodded, accepting the offer for a ride home. As she climbed into the car, a mix of relief and apprehension washed over her. The officer, trying to ease the tension, started a conversation. He asked Ava about her day, her school, and why she was so far from home. He sensed Ava's unease and a reluctance to share the whole story. As the officer's car pulled up to her house, Ava felt a rush of urgency. She muttered a quick thank you and hurriedly opened the door, eager to escape the confines of the vehicle and the officer's probing questions. In her haste, Ava didn't notice the small device slipping from her pocket, falling silently onto the car floor. It lay there, an inconspicuous piece of metal and plastic, its significance unbeknownst to anyone but her. She closed the car door behind her, unaware that she had just left behind the very thing that had caused her so much distress. The officer, preparing to drive away, glanced down and spotted the fallen device. His eyes narrowed in recognition, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. He picked it up, examining it closely, his mind racing with implications. Yet, he chose to remain silent, pondering the best course of action, knowing that revealing his recognition might scare Ava further. Ava walked away, her back to the officer and the car, oblivious to the officer's discovery. The officer watched her retreating figure, the device held tightly in his hand. He was torn between calling out to her and keeping his discovery to himself. Finally, he tucked the device into his pocket, deciding to investigate further before revealing anything. Why had Ava been so nervous? What was the significance of this device? His duty as an officer urged him to find answers, but he also felt a responsibility to protect the frightened young girl he had just encountered. Upon entering her home, the walls seemed to close in on Ava. She found her mother in the kitchen, and with a trembling voice, Ava began to unravel the day's events. The story, with its mysterious old man and the enigmatic device, sounded like something out of a suspense novel, not something her daughter should ever have experienced. Ava recounted everything: the crowded bus, the old man's strange behavior, and the whispers of the passengers. She described the device in detail, her mother hanging on to every word. With the gravity of the situation settling in, Ava's mother knew they needed help. She suggested they go to the police, hoping they could shed some light on the mysterious device and perhaps find the old man. The next morning, Ava and her mother arrived at the police station, a building that loomed large in Bustling. An officer led them to a small room where Ava was asked to describe the old man. A police sketch artist listened intently, his pencil moving swiftly across the paper. Ava sat quietly, her eyes fixed on the sketch. It was like seeing a ghost from that strange day on the bus. As they finished, the officer in charge assured them that they would do everything to investigate the matter thoroughly. Days later, the police called with unexpected news. They had identified the old man from Ava's sketch. His face, once just a fleeting memory, had led them to a name and an address. The police moved swiftly, apprehending the old man at his residence. Ava learned of the arrest with a mix of shock and disbelief. In the following days, Ava and her mother waited anxiously for more information. Each ring of the phone sent a jolt of anticipation through the house. The old man maintained his innocence throughout the questioning. His voice was steady, his eyes unwavering as he insisted that his intentions were benign. Ava, upon hearing of the old man's claims, found herself torn. The fear and confusion of that day on the bus collided with the possibility of a simple misunderstanding. Could she have misjudged the situation? Yet the police delved into the old man's past, searching for clues that might shed light on the present. The old man's life was a tapestry of ordinary and obscure, leaving the detectives to sift through the threads for truth. As the investigation progressed, new details about the device began to emerge. It was unlike anything the police had seen before. Its technology advanced and purpose obscure. Experts were called in, their analysis deepening the mystery rather than dispelling it. The device, once just a curious object, now stood at the heart of a complex web of questions. Together, Ava and her family braced for the final revelations of the investigation. The house was thick with anticipation, each ring of the phone or knock on the door stirring a flurry of emotions. The investigation reached a pivotal moment when the device was finally identified as a sophisticated tracking device. This revelation sent shockwaves through Ava and her family. Yet the innocuous object that had seemed so harmless now revealed its sinister potential. The police, armed with this new information, began to question the old man's motives with renewed intensity. What had driven him to give such a device to a young girl? Finally, the moment of truth arrived. The old man's full story was laid bare, revealing a complex web of intentions and actions. The police shared the details with Ava and her family, who listened with bated breath. The truth was more intricate and less sinister than they had feared, but it still left them grappling with mixed feelings about the old man and his actions. In the quiet aftermath, Ava spent long hours reflecting on the events that had unfolded. She had learned hard lessons about trust and caution in a world more complex than she had realized. The experience had taught her the importance of balancing kindness with wariness, of listening to her intuition. These lessons, though learned under difficult circumstances, were now an indelible part of her growth. Ava and her family slowly found closure as they processed the ordeal together. Discussions around the dinner table became less about the incident and more about their feelings and healing. They learned to let go of the fear and uncertainty that had gripped them, choosing instead to focus on the strength and resilience they had discovered within themselves and each other. And the old man, after facing the legal consequences of his actions, received a judgment that balanced his intentions with the impact of his actions. Ava followed the proceedings with a sense of detached curiosity, no longer feeling the acute emotional connection to the case. She understood that his fate was a result of his actions, separate from her own journey of healing and understanding. As Ava moved forward, she carried with her the wisdom gained from this unexpected journey. She looked towards the future with a sense of newfound understanding, tempered by the knowledge that the world was more nuanced than she had once thought. With a heart open to learning and a mind sharpened by experience, Ava stepped confidently into the next chapter of her life.